Well, welcome back to another edition. I'd like to talk about our financial comfort zone on this particular podcast. I don't think I've ever talked about this at length, and hopefully, this can be um, eye opening for some of you or be informative. And I'd like to kind of get into this topic by talking about one of my friends who was a frugal do-it-yourselfer, and he's now in his 70s. He was heading out of town to visit some friends, and his wife reminded him that the gutters desperately needed cleaning. He considered delaying his trip, getting out the ladder, crawling up on the roof, and perching over the gutters to sweep the pine needles out with one hand while supporting his body weight and maintaining his balance with the other. you, uh, you might wonder, that's quite descriptive. Yeah, well, I sweep out the pine needles from my gutter and I know the drill well. So it can be a little precarious, especially the older we get. And he thought to himself, you know, maybe I should just ask my wife to call someone to do that. So he did, and not eager to see him crawling around on the roof herself, she quickly agreed. When I make that call, should I run the price by you? She asked. No, just go ahead and hire someone. Then he kind of thought about that for a little bit, and true to living a lifetime of frugality, he added, well, unless it's exorbitantly expensive. She asked him, then what would you like me to do if it's exorbitantly expensive? He thought about that for a moment, and he imagined himself returning home with that task still undone from his trip. He says, on second thought, go ahead and pay whatever it costs. At this point in my life, I have more money than energy. I thought that was a fantastic line. And we could get off onto what is money and the fact that a function of money is being a storehouse, uh, and that it does represent energy. As we store it up, it's energy that we can unleash when we become too old to get up and clean out the gutters. Um, but we won't go there. We'll stick with the topic. So there's a lot of money scripts here that are involved with this simple little story. Um, what kept him from hiring the gutters done in the past? Well, a bunch of money scripts. It could have been early on in his life that he had money script, I can't afford to hire someone. Now, money scripts are all partially true and partially false. At that point in time in his life, that money script could be absolutely true. That maybe he couldn't afford to hire someone because it would have actually taken money away from uh, more important things like food, clothing, shelter. Maybe at that time in his life, his time wasn't that valuable. Um, he became a business owner, but that could have been during the days where he had the time to get up on the roof and clean out the gutters. So oftentimes people get the impression that money scripts are bad, and money scripts are neither inherently bad or good. They are contextual. So the wrong script in the wrong play is not a good thing. But the right script in the right play is a good thing. And in this case, you could have a money script that I can't afford to hire somebody, and it just worked perfectly. The deal is or where the problem becomes is when circumstances change and we don't change with them. When we become in our 70s and we're still clinging to the money script of, I can't afford to hire someone. Well, things have changed. And in this case, he's saying, duh, I have more money than energy. I can afford to hire somebody. Um, and other money scripts that could be have popped up for him over the years, hiring someone to do household tasks I could do myself is wasteful. Um, Chores like this just come along with owning a home. It's faster to do it myself. By the time I call around and find somebody else to do it, I could have had it done. All of those are potential money scripts. And again, all of them have their place. All of them are true in certain circumstances. It probably is true. You could get the ladder out, get up there and get it done a lot faster than making the call and waiting for somebody to come. The question is, will you still be alive if you did it yourself, right? At age 70, at age 80, at age 90. So this was one story that came to mind. And before we delve into the financial comfort zone that might keep someone locked into um, this, let's take a look at another example. One of my retired clients in March of 2020 bought the second brand new car of her life. Though it wasn't a luxury model, it was sporty and bright red. Between the time she ordered it and the time that it arrived, the pandemic hit. So for the first several weeks that she owned the car, it stayed in the garage, in part because those were the very beginning of the stay-at-home restrictions. But there was another part of her that just felt embarrassed to drive it. Now, certainly, there are some money scripts at play here. Some people find it difficult to spend money on things like new vehicles that they can easily afford, which she could. She could easily afford this. It's something that she wanted and that she would enjoy and use. And some of the money scripts that she told me that were coming up for her is, I shouldn't have a new car when so many others are losing jobs and struggling financially. So there was a lot of guilt popping up that when other people are hurting, it's not okay for her to be doing well. In this case, she didn't deserve to drive that new car, even though it was sitting in her garage. Another money script she identified is, I shouldn't have bought a car with the economy so uncertain. I might need that money. Well, again, um, in her case, that was not true. She could easily afford the car. If things got bad enough where she needed the money for that car, things would have been beyond repair. So, nevertheless, those are two money scripts that um, earlier in life, totally, when she was um, a single mom with raising two or three kids, yeah, that would not have been a good idea to buy that car because she might have needed that money. In fact, she probably would have needed to borrow for it. But things changed. Life was different, and yet the money script didn't change. So each of these stories could be just the tip of the money script iceberg. Um, there could be many, many more, but some people hate tasks like cleaning gutters or house cleaning. Uh, they could afford to hire them done, and yet they choose to do those chores themselves. Some people could afford a new car, but because of the money scripts uh, tied to concern over the economy or where things are with others, don't do that. Now, these money scripts are um, internal. Not to say all money scripts are internal, but they're about the person, what the person is perceiving themselves. They're held in place by what they think, feel, or believe about their money behaviors. But there's other money scripts that are driven by what you believe other people or society at large might think about your money behaviors, not so much what you think. For example, you could have a money script that says only rich people have someone else do their house cleaning or yard work. Um, so the fact that you're cleaning out your gutters and resisting hiring somebody could be, wow, what will other people think if they see that I'm hiring? If my neighbors see I'm hiring this done, they'll think I'm rich. You could have a money script that if I hired someone to do my gutters, my neighbors would think I was trying to be better than them. Or the same thing with a new car. If I drive a new car, people will think I'm a selfish rich person. Now, the you could also have a money script that if I drive a new car, um, uh, people will not think I'm frugal because folks like me, advisors like me, will tell people your best financial deal is to buy a car that's 2 or 3 years old. You usually get your best bang for the buck because the depreciation is off of it. And you can have a money script that, wow, if I drive a new car, then I am no longer frugal. Well, that could be true. It also could be true that you can't afford a new car. I mean, let's face it, if nobody's buying new cars, there's no 2 or 3 year old cars for frugal folks to buy. So the point of all this is that the what would people think money scripts are often externally driven and can be very culturally or societally driven. We tend to associate with and live in neighborhoods physically, live near people who mirror our financial circumstances and our money scripts. So we call this a financial comfort zone. And a financial comfort zone is often shared by people who have similar incomes. They could have similar lifestyle. They could have similar spending and saving habits, beliefs about money, even beliefs about political policy, political parties. So this comfort zone forms an artificial boundary that we impose on ourselves or others. And the financial comfort zone isn't necessarily defined by what we can or cannot afford. It could be. If I'm in a financial comfort zone of people that I know are making the same amount of money as I am, that can be one zone. But generally speaking, when we're, say, a lifestyle comfort zone, uh, can have nothing to do with what we can or cannot afford, or even by what we really want. Yet we and those around us can become uncomfortable if we move outside of those boundaries. And that's where the issue comes. That's where the what would people think, WWPT, if I move out of my comfort zone, either above or below it. And you've probably heard me say that the object in working with our money scripts is to, and trying to modify our money scripts, is to expand the boundaries of our financial comfort zone. And people can and do expand their comfort zones. Like kids who grow up in a low income family um, may be able to expand their comfort zone and get an education or go to careers that bring them financial success far beyond that of their parent. Um, However, and it can be reasonably often that those who leave the financial comfort zone of their peers are ostracized unless they mend their ways and return to the beliefs and the behaviors of the zone. And I've talked about Louis Barres, I believe. I sometimes mispronounce his last name, as he's noticed this in uh, communities of the working poor, poverty, that when a person climbs out of that they're ostracized. I see that in my area, in within some of the Lakota culture and some of the reservations. So that's what we're talking about, this financial comfort zone. And when a person breaks out of that, it can not only become uncomfortable for them, it can be uncomfortable for everybody else in their zone. So we want to get things back to homeostasis. Let's look at the flip side for those growing up in wealthy families. Normal may include private schools, international travel, live-in household help, expectations of a private education, maybe Ivy League, and then being followed by a lucrative career. So any time a person breaks out of that zone, let's say it's on the downside of that, where they don't embrace private schools, they go to a public school, they decide to become an artist or something that wouldn't be considered a lucrative career. Um, that can be very uncomfortable for the family, for their peers, and they will get a lot of pressure typically to come on, uh, get a grip and go get into the private college. You know you're not going to go anywhere unless you do it, with a lot of pressure to get them on track again. Um, and those growing up, say, in families with limited income, um, they'll typically inhabit a lower financial comfort zone. So their normal might include shopping at thrift stores, squeaking by from month to month, having little or no expectation of a higher education. So in both these cases, the expectations people grow up with tend to keep them in their financial comfort zones. And once again, they're artificial boundaries that we impose on ourselves or others. And they're not necessarily defined by what we can or cannot afford. Um, let's take an example of when a person has a certain lifestyle, and maybe they were raised in a financial comfort zone. Let's take the high income earner, and they come to expect a housekeeper. They come to expect a certain quality of food or travel or clothing, and then then they move out or circumstances change for some reason where they can't, they don't have the income to support that lifestyle. And yet they continue in that lifestyle. Well, to continue, if you don't have the income, means you borrow, right? Credit cards. And so everything is good. They can continue to be in that familiar lifestyle. They can continue to be with friends and eat at places that they can't afford, but they can afford to borrow to do it until eventually the wheels come off the financial bus. Um, so that's an example of how we can live in a financial comfort zone above what we can afford. But the opposite is also true. We can live a life of frugality, maybe like my friend cleaning out his gutters. It's probably possible he could have afforded to have the gutters cleaned out 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And this is especially true of people with frugality. While frugality was needed at a certain point of their life, the boundaries don't get the money scripts don't get expanded, they don't get modified, and they continue to live a lifestyle far below what their income can provide them. So when you think about that, it's no wonder that people that come into unexpected wealth consciously can feel a need to get rid of it. Why? Because they're used to being in a lifestyle zone that, let's just say, matched their income. And now they come into unexpected wealth, and they can afford so much more. It can trigger all sorts of money scripts about the rich, if they're negative money scripts, that I don't deserve it, I can't afford it, what will people think if I'm going out and buying a new car? I'm thinking of an example once of a gentleman who went and bought a Porsche Boxer, and largely it spent the first 2 years in his garage. And he was asked, why? Why don't you drive it? And he said, I just can't get over what people are thinking when I'm driving around in this luxury car. So people get back to that comfort zone. I'm thinking of another client that could absolutely afford Porsches and just about any car that she would have wanted, and she drove a van. And I forget what it was. It might have been a Dodge van or something. And some of her friends asked her, "Why are you driving a Dodge van?" She says, "Well, I just want to fit in with the people around me." And the response was, "I don't know anybody else of means that works harder to be perceived as middle class as you do." So I'm thinking of another story of a couple that I once had inherit several $1,000,000. And they had no idea that mom had that much money. All at once, they had the means to move into a much higher lifestyle zone. And yet their reaction was depression. They came into my office asking, "What's wrong with us?" Our friends are saying, "Well, now finally you can afford to buy the house that you've always wanted to buy." They rented. And they said, "Why are we depressed?" So we spent some time exploring their money beliefs and discovered their number one money script was money we didn't earn isn't worth having. Moving slowly out of their financial comfort zone by their own efforts would have been fine, but being shoved out of it so suddenly by an unearned inheritance provided a huge challenge. And so we did a lot of work with them, helping them um, expand and modify those money scripts. And it's a very cool thing that today they have not gotten rid of that money. It's still supporting them very nicely into retirement. So I guess it's just no wonder that people coming into unexpected wealth can feel this compulsion to get rid of it, right? And it's all about the familiar comfort zone. And one way to get back into that zone is to get rid of the money somehow. That's where they're comfortable. That's where their friends are comfortable. Um, so that's some of what's been on my mind around comfort zone. Um, you know, I'm thinking that we've talked about sudden wealth. Same thing can happen to those in higher financial comfort zones. Suppose a high earning professional couple, they're accustomed to that affluent lifestyle. They lose nearly half of their net worth in an economic downturn. Maybe one of them's laid off. While they're not going to starve, uh, they could scale back their spending and still live comfortably. But this might not seem like an option to them. Just like the one we talked about recently, if somebody raised in a higher income bracket, when they've been in it themselves, changing their financial circumstances would move them out of the place that they felt they belonged. So it's possible that they could go into debt, they could spend down the assets they do have left, all concerned about what will other people think? What will people think that now we can't go with them to the expensive dinners or the expensive international travel? And what's going on there? Well, it's that pain. In IFS speak, it's the pain, the vulnerability of an exile, right? A manager, a poor part of them, is saying, no, we must keep this lifestyle up. Why? Because the pain, what that means to a vulnerable part of us is too much. It could mean I'm a failure if I have to reduce this. It could mean the fear of loss of friends. Uh, just a lot of pain can be associated with continuing to live in the financial comfort zone. Same with what will people think. It's the pain of rejection, of loneliness that can be driving this rigidity of our money scripts. So I think I'm just about out of time. So the wrap up here is that money scripts around something as simple as to whether to hire help for a household task or buying a new car can be amazingly complex. So paying attention to what we imagine, what other people are thinking, paying attention to the emotions that are around that can give us a huge insight into our internal relationship with money. Thanks for joining me.